Hi, welcome back to part 3 of this marketplace asset tutorial for the camera management of characters. What we're doing now is we're adding a first-person camera to the character and making the character cycle to it, or at least we're trying to. So we're going to add a spring arm and parent it to the head and into the viewport. I don't like adding it to a bone. If you don't have good animations, it will make people sick, me particularly, so please don't do it unless you make your good animations. We're moving the values here, and then I'm setting this value to -30. The beauty of the inverted spring is that if I hit a wall and collide to it, supposedly, the camera that I attach here will be able to slide backwards and not clip into the viewport, into the wall. So we'll take the camera, move it to the third-person character, and perfectly snapped for once to where I wanted it to. We'll call this one FPS cam. I can't type, getting tired. Okay, so we have this, it's the camera, it's just this, as always, just like before, just like the other thing. If we do auto possess here and we do not auto possess there, compile and save and get into the game, we'll see that we have the first person camera attached to the player and that it transitions beautifully. Obviously, I don't have rotation control to it, and that may not be obvious, but it is because the spring arm didn't have the pawn rotation controller enabled. So doing that, I can now look around as well, and everything is pretty much fine. I got lucky with the placement of the camera. It is actually not horrible. Usually, obviously, it's just like eyeballing it, so it's not very good. We'll go back to having the third-person camera as default, and then we'll discuss an attack plan, if you will, for getting the system to work. So whenever you're working with multiple items, you need a way to loop through them and figure out what they are. So let's do a little checking to see what is available to us, and particularly inside the camera operations, because the event that we need to worry about is really when we go to the internal camera. Which camera will we use? Is it going to be the value passed to by here, so we can actually transition to the camera that we tell it to, which will update the reference and always make us transition back to this camera. So this in itself should just work. Let's try implementing it first. Okay, let's go into the character blueprint, right, in the event graph, and we'll need a mouse wheel. So if I use axis, the axis will be up and down. So I want to make sure that this value is not equal to 0. And then after that branch, I will copy the branch and put another one right there. So this value was true, and now this axis value, is it greater than 0? If it is greater than 0, then we are in the positive and we can transition. So we clicked forward, we rolled the mouse wheel forward, we can transition to this cam. If we are in the false, we can transition back to the follow cam. Okay, so that's how we transition. Now to transition, we call the camera operation BPI interface option. Internal camera interface call, and we want the message option. So we have 1, we have 2. Right, we need to get the child actor right there. Okay, super simple. I can actually copy this to here. I believe it is just accessing the component, so that works. Connect this one here. So we have the 2 function calls. They are calling their own children. Let's see what that does. So I go forward, I go forward, I go forward, and it's not going forward anymore. I go back, I go back, I go back, and it's not going forward anymore. Now the issue, and why I mentioned I go forward and I go forward and I go forward, is that this where are you, character? This pathway and this pathway are being run every single time that we roll the mouse wheel. But technically, because we're sending the camera to it and we have that information available from here, so let's check what the name is called. Is the internal camera, right? So we get a internal camera. So that's our internal camera. This is the one that we want to go to. This is the value that we sent to it. If this camera is not equal to this camera, branch if it's not equal, we make it equal. Same thing on the other side. Reverse it. This monstrosity, however monstrous, should function for us. I would try to clean it up, but it is kind of pointless. It actually looks very nice, doesn't it? It's like a monster or spaghetti. Alright, play it. So we're going in, we're going in, we're going in. Let's put this blueprint on the side real quick. Go into the third person example and double check that it is not going past that, and then not going past that. Good. So what this does now is, without an actual index, it allows us to say that we can toggle the head on or off, right? So remember, initially in the very first tutorial we split the head of the character off and we set the shadow property for it. Now it's time that when we go into the first person view, we toggle it. Toggle visibility. And if we come back out, we toggle the visibility back out. Okay. So you see that happens instantly, and that looks kind of ugly. So, whoops. So move it inwards and we do a delay node. So you might not remember, but I do. The timing on the delay node for the camera was 0.5. So that's when that happens. So let's say that 0.4 is good enough to remove the head, and then that when you're coming back out, a delay of 0.1 is enough to put the head back in so that it reappears. Compile, save, play, and the head disappears when you get, before you clip through it and before you clip out of it. Fairly well timed, considering. Again, coming in here and coming out should actually just function, but let's double check it. Yes, perfect. So as you may have noticed, we are running around headless here, and as cool as that is, we need to fix that, obviously, because if we are transitioning in and out to the external camera, we want the head to be popping back on. Now, if you don't recall, the transition from the external camera is coming in from the external camera itself. And this process here that we built is creating the call, the interface call that brings us to the view target with blend and uses the external camera as an option. So we need to fix all of that. The best way to do that, at least I think is the best way, is to keep track of who is who. So the internal camera, we need an ID number or something. We can set it to integer and just call it cam ID. And then we will need a way to get that value. Get cam ID. So on this one we want to return the integer value and cam ID. Compile, save inside the interface, and you will get a new function here for cam ID. Now if you double click this, you can drag back in here and promote to variable and call it, I hate you when you do that, I underscore cam ID. So this is essentially just returning whatever value we set. And now that we added the other option to the internal external camera, it's probably worth it to add an integer value to the camera. Expose it, set it inside the management as the very first option. Compile, save. Inside the construction script, do we need to worry about it? No, but we do want to pass this value along here on begin play. If this camera was set to auto possess, we pass that along so that we know which we set the value inside the other component. So the other thing we need to do, we gave it option to have an ID. Let's give it an actual ID. Cam ID of 1 for the camera that actually is the FPS camera, cam ID of 0 for the other one with the auto possess. So set, okay, save to that, and then here we could just get the information from the camera ID, or we can drag it out of the actor maybe. Cam ID is not, we could get it. I would say that just type it because it's a lot faster, and we already know that this is the FPS camera and this is the non-FPS camera, so we can maintain that. So then the other place to update that is inside the external camera. The external camera, now when you go into the external camera, you're fine. Now when you come back into the internal camera, let's set this to 3 to flag that we are neither first person nor second person. No, since we had the get, why don't we use the get? Get cam ID. We'll have to move things to the side a little. And then we will just keep using whatever the last cam ID that was used was. Now we need to set this up. We have the variable in here, but we're not really using it out here. So that value is kind of dead. So let's go set. And this will set the cam ID to the default value that we feed it whenever we feed it, or it will just be 0, which is the third person camera. When we go to the external camera, we can actually set this value. Whoa, what just happened? We can manually set this value to 3. I think. We might not want to do that just yet. Skip it for now. But we did do it for the external camera, right? Somewhere along the line we set a tree, didn't we? No. No, we did not. Okay. I'm starting to see things. Okay, so we have the camera ID here. We have the third person thingy. We have the code here that runs this thing. Now we need to decide how to transition, and we're going to be doing this in here. So first thing first, we go into the head, and if you've never done it, type tag without the H, and just add a tag inside the component tags and call it head. Okay, that allows us to go into the camera options and create a way to get that information. So if we have the owner, we do get components by tag or something. There you go, got components by tag. We type in the head. Component class actually happens to be skeletal mesh. So if we wanted to be to get less possible results, we can also select that. I don't think that needs to be selected per se. So this will give us a few results, but we really just want to get the 0, because there should only be one head that we're doing this to, and is valid. If this head is valid, then we need to figure out what to do. We will need to cast to skeletal mesh component. Or maybe not. Because we selected the component class, we might not need to cast, which is great. Toggle visibility. Okay, and we also need to check the visibility. Is visible. Get visible right down there. So and so this is visible, and the cam ID equals 1. With that done, plug that into the propagate children. No, what? Create a branch. So if this is valid, we check the branch. If this condition, if the head is visible and I'm inside camera 1, this is coming back to the internal camera. So I will toggle the head visibility to make it disappear. And bring all of this to the right so that we can fit this bit of code in. And bring all of this up. like so. Managing the nodes is really the most boring thing to do. But anyway, so we have the exec pin to check the situation. If it is not valid, we make sure that we skip this whole thing. If it is false, we make sure that we skip this whole thing. And otherwise, the visibility gets toggled and then we move on. We need to repeat the same process in here when we go into the external camera if we are on the first camera. So we can actually get the same and use the same, get cam ID equals 1, along with the same visible end and the same branch and the same exec pin. Just setting it up, making it a little nice, connecting the dots. And is it valid? No. Is it false? No. Okay, so the head is visible. We need a not. So the head's not visible, the camera is 1. We're transitioning into the external camera, and then we toggle the visibility. Compile, save, save here. So now the two are possibly overriding each other. Let's take a look by putting it in here and checking to see what happens when we hit play. We need to select the component. So far so good, it's returning false all the time. So the issue with it then must be the third person character blueprint, because it's 0 and the 1 maybe. So we assign the values here to this. We got a 1 in there, sure. Must be the delay triggering fast or something. If I eject now, will the head be on? Yep. So let's do this. It is toggling the visibility. So the head is visible. We're getting cam ID of 1. So we're hiding the head. It's just the wrong time to call this. Okay. So let's correct it this way. If we're in this, we set this one to 3. this one gets called, it calls it back into its value. Its value is given by the whatever the value is, so it will no, then this would just get locked to 3. So we have the visible value, and we are checking that the value that the camera ID that we need is 1, and then we toggle visibility. Okay, let's check that external camera is not none. So if I just append this as a conditional pin over here, it will prevent this branch from firing when we check in and out. Likewise, we should probably append it to here too, except for here we are in the external camera always, so maybe we don't need that. Let's check it first and determine if we need it or not later. Now if I just play and okay, so that's resolved. Now we go to the camera and the head is off. We come back in and the head should be on. So why is the head off? Let's see, we're going to the external camera and then we're toggling that visibility here. So I'm in first person, I want to toggle that out, and it's not toggling on me. So why? Let's see, because the cam ID is 1. It is. Let's add a node over here to bug it that way. A little quicker. Zoom in, go all the way out. Seems like that code is not even running. Oh, hey, there's no input over here. No wonder. Yeah. We'll leave that. Alright, it's toggling. Okay, let's take a look at it in actual size here. Toggles in, toggles out. I go out, it's there. If I go here, it does not disappear. It does not disappear. Okay, I think that settles it for this portion of the tutorial. Let's go over the blueprint one more time here. So we're checking the external camera operations. We are checking the value is not 0, and then if it's greater than or less than 1, we're deciding to cycle the camera. We can either cycle it up or cycle it down back to the third person character. There is a delay node in here that might or might not cause some issues with the fact that the triggering of the value when you do something like this is going to keep on activating both. So keep that in mind. That's something that might need to be worked on. The operations has a visibility now being set manually in. Let's clean this up just a tad. Well, why don't we? So basically just add a reroute node down here. This one goes to there, so this one is the one that we really want to reroute. For this one we just set it to here, and then on here move this down. For this one we'll bring it down here so that it's a little cleaner. And position it like this. Q to even them out. Snap them down. You know, let's snap this lower. Something like that. This one can then just be natural. And all of these nodes over here, let's clean them up too. Let's do one over here. Let's do a reroute node right under this one so that we can just connect it like so. And for the camera, we are memorizing the camera, so instead, well, let's see where that was actually. We're memorizing the external camera and then reusing the external camera. So since we're memorizing, we can just get, not set, get, and that saves us the line coming across, makes it a little cleaner. There, a little more. So same thing that we did above, we should do here. And on this one, let's start by just organizing this into something. Move this here. This one will stay lined up to that one, so this one can come here, aligned to it. And then there is the not valid pathway. The not valid pathway, let's distance it just a tad and move it on all along to here. Then we have let's do a compile and save so that I get my colors back. Then we have this whole stuff here, and we'll just scoot it down so that it's in line with that and in line with that. Looks a lot prettier, more legible. Okay, so let's fix this issue here with this jumble. So we have one target node there, we have this one here, and this one here is the camera option that is being set and checked. We're checking this value way down here, so let's bring this over to here and connect it to here. And then another pin to keep the line straight. And this one, so from this one we go up here, we go up here, connect, and we took care of that one. And then we can actually connect this one too, and maybe give it a little bit more space so that it doesn't look so bad. Move them up a little. Okay, good. We consider that a little better looking, not by much. Compile, save. What else do we do? So we'll go through it again, right? So we're getting the owner. We're checking the tag for the mesh that we labeled head. We're selecting skeletal mesh component so we don't have to use a cast. We get 0. We check that 0 is valid, and that's important because if it's not valid, we can just skip the whole bunch of the code that toggles the visibility. It also prevents errors. Then we check the visibility. On the external camera, we're checking that the camera visibility for the head needs to be toggled on and off. So we're in first person mode, which is index 1. And if that is true, we toggle the visibility. If it is not, we skip it, move on. In the other section, when the internal camera is triggered, so we're at the external, we stepped out and we're coming back in. We checked if we have visibility for the head. We check that the camera we want is actually the one in first person, and the camera in first person was actually reset over here. And let's straighten that out too. And at the same time, we check that the external camera is set to nothing, because if it's not set to nothing, then somehow I am triggering this node when this is when this is not been activated. So we're preventing it from happening when the camera is not coming back in automatically. In case that those conditions match, we toggle the visibility for the mesh. Otherwise, we keep moving on with the branch. The branch here checks that the asset value for the camera that we're trying to call is set to something. If it's empty, we keep moving on. If it's not empty, we set it and memorize the fact that we are which camera we are currently using. And then we move on with the rest. After a delay of 0.5, we set the external camera to nothing because we assume that we're coming back into the external from the external camera. And if we're not, it really doesn't matter because the entry will already be empty. So we have this transition, and it actually doesn't seem to get stuck right now. Not as bad as it used to anyway. Come back in here, I can play with the mouse wheel, it works fine. Play with the mouse wheel, head pops in and come back out, head is fine. Okay. Thank you for watching. See you all in part 4.